Writers are losing their homes. AI is changing the game, and we're now 100 days into the Hollywood writer's strike that's going to be affecting you and me. So, what does this mean for us? Well, I've got a Hollywood writer who's about to spill the tea. Take out your popcorn, take out your coffee, take out your mimosas, and come join us. We have officially reached the 3-month mark of the Hollywood writer's strike. So, what does this actually mean for the entertainment industry? And how bad are Hollywood writers and production teams suffering right now? I am so excited for you to join us because we have a Hollywood writer who is blessing us with his time today and really giving us the 411 of what it's really like in Hollywood and how this is going to affect you and me. Before we get started, do me a favor, guys, and hit that subscribe button. Give this video a thumbs up so we can push out this content and super valuable information to everyone out there because this truly affects everyone. All right, guys, I'm so excited for you guys to meet a very special and dear friend of mine who is an insanely hilarious and funny and amazing person, but incredible writer in Hollywood. I've known this person for maybe 10 years. I don't even know how long. Tyler, we're getting old. Tyler Straessle!
Hey!
Oh, thank you so much for being on here, Tyler.
Of course, I have all the time in the world.
All the time in the world. He says that with a laugh, but maybe.
Right. Yeah, I know. I cry inside.
Yeah,
But
he's crying inside, even though he's laughing. So, if you guys don't know Tyler, he is truly an insanely incredible writer. So, he grew up in Indiana, fellow Midwester like myself. But he started his career actually as an intern on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. Then he was a production assistant for Desperate Housewives. I know y'all love Desperate Housewives and Weeds. And then get this, he was a writer's assistant and then script coordinator for a ton of your favorite comedy shows out there. I'm talking Parks and Rec, Master of None, and the show Love. And his writing credits include The Good Place and oh my gosh, count them, 5 different Hallmark Channel original movies, as well as multiple commercials for Nick Offerman and Kristen Bell. I didn't even know that. What the heck, Tyler?
yeah, that was last year. That was fun. We did a pop
Oh my gosh. Well, Tyler, I know you're joking, you're saying you have all the time in the world, but we really appreciate you being on here today and just kind of giving us the real lay of the land. What has it been like? I mean, we've hit that 100-day mark for the writer strike right now. What does that really mean for writers like yourself who depend on this for your living?
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because like the last strike in 2008 lasted about 3 months. So and I'm not sure if you've read this yet, but we are about to restart talks. I'm not sure if negotiations are starting, that we're starting with a meeting. I think it's like a meeting to talk about negotiations, but we'll take anything at this point.
Okay.
And so yeah, it's been wild because obviously the actors adding to this just adds a whole nother layer of complications, but
Mm.
also it's good for actors and writers to be united because we're at a point where the studios and the streamers are very, very powerful, and
Mm.
it's not like it was in 2008 where everyone is noticing a giant lack of content on TV. It's like our shows were interrupted. The Office, like Lost, like all these big shows had
Wow.
shortened season, and people around the country knew about the writer's strike because of that. They do know about it now, but I don't think people are feeling it the same way that they did before because of sort of the banked content of Netflix and all this kind of stuff. But really quick, personally, like I had just started on a Christmas movie, my 6th Hallmark movie, like 2 weeks before the strike.
Oh
So
no.
that was a very uncertain time, but earlier in the year, everyone was kind of stockpiling scripts. There was a lot of talk that it was going to happen, and
Mm.
AI came out of nowhere. Like it was added to our topics of discussion at the very last second. And so it's like this strike is very different because the AI is the new Wild West where no one knows kind of, how to. It's like, how do you regulate AI and make a deal in a couple weeks? Like you just can't. It's good. It's doing a good
Wow.
job. So the issues are very different, but we're still doing streaming and residuals from that. and trying to get more transparency from the studios in terms of how many people are watching. Now there's ad-based plans. How are we compensated for that when our shows are on Netflix or whatever? So, and not to just call it Netflix, it's all of them, but that's the big one. So,
You
so
mentioned
yeah,
a few different things right now, which is how different of a landscape. You don't think about it of that 2008 writer strike. I mean, there's so much content. I feel like the whole world hasn't really felt the effects yet of
yeah,
this strike.
yeah, and honestly, like this isn't even that much of a conspiracy theory anymore, but like we believe like studios wanted a strike because they can save a lot of money. Streaming has kind of like went down a little bit after the pandemic. So like a lot of studios are trying to kind of like cut costs a little bit and all that. And so one way to do it is to like allow a strike to happen. And the way that they negotiated with us almost tells us that's what they wanted, because they took firm no's on like a lot of our points of negotiation without even any sort of like, why don't we do this instead or whatever. So almost like forcing a strike, it felt like, because there was not
Really
a lot of counter offer into anything we were asking. So it like
interesting.
it feels like a little bit of a strategy on their end. So
What were you guys asking for that really is something you want to make sure you fight for now? I know you
uh,
mentioned AI and in the actors world, that's a huge thing. You know, Fran Drescher pointed out, the president of SAG-AFTRA pointed out, if we don't fight for this now, in 3 years from now, it's going to be too late. So how
that's
do
the
you guys feel? How does AI affect you guys?
Well, honestly, there are some programs that like I've tried them and they can do a pretty decent job of putting out like a draft of a script. And so it's not perfect, obviously, but and it never will be, because think about like the movies and things we watch. We like them because they're human. We like them it's
Mm,
like if we're discussing a movie that AI wrote, it's almost like it's not even worth discussing, because it's like, well, there's nothing to pick apart. A machine wrote it. But when it's a person, they're going through from their personal experience, all that stuff.
mm,
Um, but what we think like a lot of studios might want to do is have an AI program write a first draft of a script and then have a writer come in and edit it to make it that. However, that cuts out so many jobs. It lowers our pay dramatically. It also doesn't, it's also not like, it's like who wrote it then? Like it's like,
yeah, I
so
was
like
just going to
part
ask
of
that.
right. So part of what we're doing is like, and one of the ways we can kind of sidestep AI in the meantime is be like, well, the rules, if we're going to make an agreement with the AMPTP, are a human or a WGA member is the only one who can have credit on a script. And in order to have credit on a script, you have to have been the one to write the draft. So if they hire AI to write it, they're not allowed to use another writer to write something, or to edit it or whatever. It has to be just a writer or just AI. But like we also know that they know that AI is not at that level and they need us.
Mm,
So and we know by the fact that they invited us to a meeting to restart negotiations that they are aware of that. So we know that now. But yeah, you're right. It's like, how do we can't regulate it now, and what Fran said is right too, but how can we do as much as we can right now to avoid like a really negative impact down the line? Like, I mean, I'm sure you're aware of that, like background actors being asked to sell their likeness essentially,
mhm.
for a day of work, and then they own
For
them.
the rest of their lives. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very scary. You didn't really think about this even a year ago, that this would
No, like
even be a conversation.
it didn't feel possible. Like, and it's like, and it just happened to be at a point where every 3 years the guilds negotiate with the unions, and it just happened to be the year that we are doing negotiations. So it felt like something we had to cram in really fast. And so it was almost inevitable a strike was going to happen if we weren't going to have that figured out. And their attitude towards it was more like, we want to use it and we're probably going to use it and we can talk about it, but that's the extent of it. And that was like, no, we're willing to make a little sacrifice right now to make sure that people aren't taken advantage of. So, that alone was going to be an issue. However, for me, I think that the biggest thing is residuals, and
Mm,
ensuring that we are properly compensated for, having like, for example, like I have an episode of The Good Place on Netflix, and just to be totally transparent, I get a couple $100 every few months, and that episode is on there 24/7, available for people to watch at all times. But if you were to air it on TV, you would see exponentially higher rates, and that only airs once for half an hour. So think about it. It's like, how do you then calculate something that's on there at all times, available to be accessed at all times, now has ad plans attached to it? They're not telling us exactly how many people are watching. So we're still doing the same thing in 2008, where we're figuring out like how do we figure out what's fair there. So that's a big issue.
Tyler, correct me if I'm wrong, but you also were nominated for an Emmy for that episode, right?
Not an Emmy, no.
Okay,
So,
okay.
but something, Writers Guild Award, Award for outstanding show, and it was us for the whole season 2 of The Good Place. So all the writers of that season.
Wow.
So
I know
WGA.
I still get a few residual checks, right, from
Yeah.
broadcast and streaming, and streaming is like nothing. It's
Oh,
crazy.
it's insane. It's crazy. It is crazy because it's all it is now. And so that kind of ties in with another ask that the writers are asking for, which is kind of a little contentious point with me, where I'm a little like,
Mm.
I stand with my guild. I agree with everything that they are doing. But one of the points of negotiation I'm a little iffy on, and that is the mandatory staffing point. And I don't know if you've heard much about this one.
No, explain that to me.
So basically, streaming shows and shows in general now, the model used to be you work on a 22 episode show. You work for 9 months a year. That was actually pretty standard. There'd be like 17 to 20 writers on a show.
Yeah.
Now, shows are 6 to 8 episodes, and there's only a few writers on them. There might be more shows.
My heart drops.
Yeah, there might be more shows, but even if you worked on 2 shows, you may not even equal the amount you would make working on one show. So it's like, and it's hard enough to find one show. Finding 2 shows within a year to work on top of that, you're not going through all of the process that a writer should be going to grow into a producer or a showrunner, which is going through post-production, going to set, because a lot of times all the scripts are written in advance and then the writers are just out of the picture. So that sort of like pipeline of moving up the ladder is kind of interrupted now, which actually in the end hurts studios because they don't have as many experienced writers to draw from, because no one's getting that anymore. So that's an issue. So the problem is now it's always been a gig economy, but it feels even more giggy than it ever has. But to me, and so part of the Writers Guild's demand is, I think even specifically they mentioned like, we want to have 10 writers on every show. And to me, I was a little bit like, that's tough to ask in a business sense, because people don't like this, but a couple examples are like Taylor Sheridan and Mike White, the White Lotus. Like, they write pretty much all the scripts.
And Yellowstone, right?
Yeah, Yellowstone. Yeah. So when a studio sees that a show is doing very well and they don't have to pay 10 more writers for that, it's like, what is their incentive to meet that demand? You know what I mean? It's kind of a demand for us to keep writing going as a career, which I totally understand. But I think what it does is it doesn't make a lot of sense to try to hold on to an old model of things when things are changing this way, and
what
so
would
it's
be a better demand? Yeah.
huh?
What's a better demand? Because I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
How can you force to have 10 writers in a new model where we actually don't need 10 writers? So how do these people make a living? What's your idea for that, Tyler?
I am 100% on like up residuals. Residuals should be like up and up and up, because like in the off season, that's how writers have always kind of survived, is residuals. And now we know there is a giant source of income that we are not getting, that is owed to us in streaming, because I mean, like you see again, you know, we see how much the highest paid people are paid in the company. We know how many subscribers there are, and if you do the math on that, that's crazy. Plus the ad plans, all that kind of stuff. Plus just even if people aren't really watching something, having it available at all times is a convenience that should be compensated for.
Mm.
Otherwise, like, well, we don't, you know, we won't have our content on at all times. Maybe we'll start having it on just from this to this. But I think that this is an income source that we are owed that will offset the challenges of not having longer seasons anymore without asking for something that seems like it's very hard to like justify to
Mm.
studios. You know, I don't totally agree with I don't agree with the studio's attitude on it because they didn't even really like have a rebuttal to what we asked, which is not a negotiation. It's like, okay, we asked for something, we asked for a lot, and then they come down, and then we go down, and then they go up a little bit, whatever. None of that happened. So regardless of how I feel about it,
Mm.
it's still not okay that they didn't see what we were asking for and try
Yeah.
to like find a solution, you
Yeah.
know. And so you know, I think that in the longer run, like the jobs thing is still an issue. You know, it's like, but it's like, but I think like creating, it's like, what other ways can we create jobs? That's a really hard thing to do, you know. And it's like I was seeing some of the writers even say like, well, just pay for the writers in the room, and if they don't do anything, then that's okay. And I'm like, you know, it's like if a showrunner doesn't need them or whatever, because like part of this is like showrunners like to dictate how many writers are in the room. A lot of them like to have a lot. Comedy writers
Mm.
specific, or comedy rooms specifically, like to have a ton, because then
Yeah.
you're just churning out jokes and ideas. A lot of
Mm.
drama writers are a little smaller rooms, you know, and they like to be a little more independent with the way they write. And it's a little more like a movie sometimes. So
Mm.
it just depends on the needs of each show. So having a one size fits all thing is not the
Not
approach. Let's
feasible.
not forget network shows do still exist. So there is still Abbott Elementary and a couple shows that
Yeah.
like, you know, people love. And so
Mm.
it's not like that's totally gone. Those jobs are there. But I
Sure.
think there is a little bit of a crisis of like, gosh, shows run 6 to 8 episodes. There's not, you know, we're only working 12 weeks a year. What do you do? And it's like become a thing.
12 weeks. Could you imagine, guys? That's 3 months out
Yeah.
of the year.
And then think
Yeah.
about like you're not even getting compensated when your show is on the streaming. You're getting something, but you're not getting what you're due. And we know that for a fact that like we're not getting what we're due. So
So,
so that's why I'm just kind of like, from a practical standpoint, this is a way to financially compensate, like to to make up for, you know, the times of not working, because it's actually money we've earned. You know, we're working and earning it. So
so your stance is
yes, there you go.
instead of forcing AMPTP to allot 10 writers to a room, let's up those residuals so those writers can survive and be proud to
Yeah,
be a writer to stay in this industry. Devil's
absolutely.
advocate, how do you respond to the studio saying we're not even making money from these streaming services? How does that make you guys feel?
Yeah. I mean, that's been a tough thing because it's like and that makes these asks seem a little harder even, because it's like, how do you ask for something like that when that's kind of the case? I mean, it's a little bit confusing of like, you know, we don't know. It's like we're being told that, but like if we don't know,
Hmm.
you know, how many people are watching, you know, whatever, like do we really, we don't have a good sense of the business enough on their end numbers wise to be able to just take that and believe everything, you know. Like it's like we can, like I think that there isn't enough information out there to show that it's declined. But until
Hmm.
we have like more substantial numbers, we need to know how many people are watching things. And I think that this is a double-edged sword, because we're going to find out a lot of shows aren't being watched, you know?
Ah,
So that could
yeah.
hurt writers too. Like I
Mhm.
have seen some numbers on some shows for like HBO Max and all that stuff. Like they do some measurements and it's low for some of them, you know? But the
Mm.
streamers also don't want people to know that, you know? So it's like,
Does that make it even more frustrating? that they're saying, well, we're not making any money, and you guys are kind of like, well, prove it.
Absolutely. And like I think that there's probably truth to it, and I think it could hurt us as well. So
Mm,
like, and I think that all the cost cutting is proving that that is actually the case. Like that they are not doing as well, especially after the pandemic. I think the pandemic, it was booming. That was what everyone was doing. It was like, and we've talked about peak TV and the bubble for so long. And this is the first time we're seeing things like get cut. Like they're doing tax write offs for just like shelving an entire show that was already written, produced, edited, ready to go. And, they're taking off shows like Grease, which I think is one that you mentioned that you really
mhm,
like, just stripping it off the service completely, you
mhm,
know? And so it's like, okay, well, there's something's going on. Like we do know that. So
mhm.
but yeah, it does make it harder to negotiate when we know that there is something like that, but we just don't have all the information, you
Yeah.
know. But now that the actors have joined us, it's like there's a little more pressure on them to sort of realize, like, okay, it's not even just now, it's like 6 months from now, how much content are people going to have? If they're losing money and there's even less content next year on their services, like that's going to be even worse. So now we do have to actually make a deal.
Tyler, you and I have chatted a lot throughout the years of how hard it is to even break into the industry as a writer, how hard it is to even get a job as a writer's assistant, not even getting that job, but as a what is it called? The production writer's assistant?
Yes.
A
Yeah.
production writer's assistant. So not even the writer's assistant, but a production writer's assistant. So what does this mean if, like you said, people aren't being trained up in these writer rooms? How are they even going to get in if it's that hard to even get those jobs? And then how are they going to progress? What does that mean for the future of television, future of films?
Yeah. I mean, that's huge. That's a huge question. And I think that, like, it's such, I feel so much for people who are trying to break in right now. Like, it's
Mm.
first was COVID and then now it's this. And I think that unfortunately, like a lot of times it falls to the more privileged few people who are able to weather strikes, who are able to weather COVID and still stick in the industry, because crew members are suffering the worst. Like I feel for IATSE and all of these other unions of below the line workers who just are just getting kind of like beat up the worst, I believe. Like, and it's so it's just terrible. It's like I know people are losing their homes or on the verge of it or can't afford to live here. And so I think that it may end up shrinking the industry. I think that that's it's going to be a little harder, but it's always been hard. People have always found a way. Things are kind of like happen in cycles, things will kind of slow down and boom again. There will never be no demand for entertainment, it's a very transitionary stage of like we're still moving through streaming right now. It's still kind of new in a weird way,
Yeah.
especially with all these new services coming up. So it's like, how do we navigate it? But even talking to people, I've been curious about people who are not in the industry, who are like, I'm like, what are you subscribing to? Like, how do you feel about it? And a lot of people are telling me it's now feeling like I have cable because all of
Yes,
them
that's
add
what
up
I was
to,
thinking.
yeah, it's like all of them sort of add up to that. And it's like, well, there is a little bit on each service, but it's not like one is the clear winner. Netflix is packed with the most content because they've been around the longest, but I still have a few streaming services because they each have something I like on them. But it does start to add up to the reason cable was being cut in the first place.
Which was too expensive. And a lot of
Exactly.
analysts, financial analysts debate, has the industry been so split by
Hmm.
so many different platforms that some of these platforms actually need to join forces? You bring up a point, and it's a really sad point, and I can't believe you're even hearing this, is people are starting to lose their homes. And Variety put out an article of alleged sources on the studio side saying that we want to make the actors and writers bleed out.
Yeah. It was like I remember seeing that and I just like my heart sank because it was like, what? Like, we're not supposed to be at war. We literally are working together. It's a working relationship. We can't
Mhm.
have, no one can have one without the other. And to say something like that,
Mhm.
it just like blows my mind. And there hasn't even been a denial after that was the case, which fits more with our theory that like they wanted a strike to cut costs, which, which honestly, I even wonder if there's like legal ramifications of that, because then you're not negotiating in good faith. You have a plan to sort of like we agreed to bargain, and if you're breaking that agreement even just by not bargaining, there's like a ramification for that as well. So that might be explored down the line. It could be. They'd have to find evidence of that they were truly doing that. But with remarks like that, it does kind of show, that there is this huge divide between us, where I think it's the top. It's like the very corporate head that is not in the creative realm at all. They're purely numbers. So
Mm.
like above us are all the development executives, people at these companies that are our bosses that we work with, that work with creatives. We don't have any ill will towards anyone like that. But when the people who are owning everything don't feel like they need us, then,
That's a
first of all,
problem.
it's a big problem. And the way that you're speaking about it like that is not going to rush us back to the negotiating table. And as hard as it is to strike and to not work, like you're kind of giving us more resolve to keep going, because like there's nothing that makes us want to work with you, And now that the actors joined, it's like there has been I've noticed a new spirit in the city of like, we're not feeling as run down, because 90 days is a long time to strike, especially when you're feeling alone. But since the actors joined, and actors are naturally have more
Energetic.
energy, and yeah, and like they bring a lot more to the fight, which has been awesome. It's been
Wow.
so great to see like the solidarity between the two
Mm.
guilds,
Our
and I
actors
think they're
audience are
feeling
going to really appreciate hearing that as well, because I think it's
good. Yeah, I mean, we love them. Like it's like not like we ever haven't, obviously, but it's like we are definitely in it together. Like we know that we're kind of using each other's leverage to help each other. And they
Mm.
notice, like again, the fact that Carol Lombardini from the AMPTP, the chief negotiator, is asking us back for a meeting already, tells us that they need us, because that quote that you mentioned about bleeding us dry meant that they didn't even want to restart negotiations till October or later. So the fact that it's sooner than that shows us that they know that this is something we need to start talking about again.
You bring up that it's a gig economy already within
Yeah.
Hollywood. I don't think a lot of people realize that, who aren't in the entertainment industry. They just think actors go from job to job, but so do writers, guys. And but on the flip side, writers and actors, they know how to survive. So
Yes, this is such a good point.
yeah, I've been hearing from a lot of actors and writers, and I love to get your take of like, we're in this and we're not going to give up until we get what, and if anyone knows how to survive better, it's actors and writers. Do you
Yes,
believe that?
absolutely. And it's so funny that comes up like I've been out on the picket lines and we've talked about that between actors and writers of like, this doesn't even feel like a different year, because it's like it's normal to go months without a job, or it's like, oh, we're just working our regular side jobs, which we have to have as well to survive. It's like, well,
Wow.
it's like funny how it's like, well, in the same way that we're asking for more is the same way we're able to survive, because we know how to do it. We've done it for so long. We've lived on so little, like that we have these survival skills that are going to help us, because we know exactly how it works already. We're trying to get out of that, but it's not like we didn't prepare for it, because again, this is another month in the life of a writer and actor. It's not abnormal to go a year without work. So
Wow.
that's and I think that there's a lucky few that don't have that issue, but the majority of union members are not working consistently.
You
So
bring up such a good point, Tyler, and you've always been really good at finances. Do you have any financial tips right now for any actors or writers during this time that you've realized, oh, this was a really good move that I made, or even just
yeah.
small tips?
Well, I mean, the good news is there are actors and writers and below the line crew funds that are available. Like, so for anyone who is in the union or even is not in the union but is a below the line worker, there's like the Writers Guild fund, there's SAG has a fund, and then there's one that's specifically for crew members. So like those are resources that like, and the guilds are good about emailing us out like these are things you can draw from. There's loans, there's also grants, you know. And so like I think it's good to take advantage of that. You know, it's like, why not? It's like, there's nothing wrong with that. This is what these funds exist for, and just knowing they're out there is, I think, an important thing.
Mm.
um but in general, like I think it may even be a personality type too, because like I have always been like a minimalist. So like I naturally think that I'm able to kind of survive longer in Hollywood because I don't require a lot.
Yeah.
I don't like, and I've been
Live
used to
above
like,
your means or anything like that.
yeah, like I mean, I worked as an assistant for years, and it's not, that's another like broken pipeline, but working as an assistant for a few $100s a week in Los Angeles for years on end, you know, is not gonna, you know, get you like your own apartment.
Yeah, I
So
was gonna
it's
say,
like,
what does
it's like
that get you?
roommates are gonna be the norm there, it's just kind of the
Yeah.
norm. But like I
We
think
had
that
no ego, like doing the climb. We all had no ego. All of us had just, we all lived near each other in North Hollywood, all had multiple
totally.
roommates.
And I think it comes from like, none of us like came from a place of where we were privileged enough to know someone in the industry who was going to kind of like either having like parents to kind of float us, or like people in the industry that are going to kind of like, oh, I know this person because we like both went to Harvard or whatever, which is a thing in the industry.
Which
So like,
is a thing. You bring up
possible.
a good point. It's that whole, if you're from Harvard, you're from the Lampoon, you get in. But we're talking about how hard it is to even get the writer's assistant jobs. And you went down a very interesting path. You and our friend Kyle Gordon went
Yeah, I
down
just
really,
saw him in Nashville. So
oh,
he's
that's amazing. Maybe we'll have to get him on at some point
totally,
where you guys took your experience and then you went the way that the green lights were going, right? And that you were
yeah.
able to do what you loved, but it looked different than what you originally thought it would look like. Can you explain just briefly how you ended up going from like sitcoms to Hallmark and how amazing that was for you in your career?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So I started on, you know, all these hit shows. And like the thing is with like when you're on like big shows, it's like even harder within that. It's like there's all these degrees of hard. It's like hard to get the job in the first place. Then it's hard to move up. It's hard to break in as a writer on there because, you know, it's like agents are filling these roles with bigger name writers, higher level ones, and the lower levels kind of get cut off more, you know. So when I started noticing on some of the shows that like I was so grateful I got to be an assistant on these shows. I got to learn how, I really learned how to write on these shows. Like they were like crash courses in how to write sitcoms and everything. And but when comes to a point where it's like, okay, this is where the pipeline kind of stops. It's like this was a show where I wasn't able to kind of move up any further. So then what do I do? You know? And so then what I did was I sort of took a leap of faith, and I was like, I decided for myself that I wasn't going to be an assistant any longer. I think I'd been one for 6 some years or longer. No, I was a production assistant when I was 22, all the way until I was a script coordinator, writer assistant up until I was 29. So it was about 7 years. And I was like, that's a long time to be an assistant. And I decided for myself that I was not going to take another one of those jobs. And if it meant I do anything else, that's fine. I'm going to write and work on my own stuff on the side. And so I got to, you know, take advantage of that time by writing samples of things I really liked. And I got to use like this new energy and time I had to build my writing skills, because when you're an assistant, your job could be 60 some hours a week. You know, it's like you also need to be writing, you need to be doing, you know, that kind of stuff. So when I did that, I actually ended up getting an agent, because like a combination of like the script that I really
Wow.
love, I knew somebody, and also they liked that I had the Good Place on my resume and these other shows. And then through having an agent, I was able to kind of like get through the process of submitting scripts to different places, and Hallmark was one of them, and I had new people there as well. And by this time I've started to know a lot of people in the industry, because you do get to know people. As 10 years in the industry, you'll get to know people. So I had friends there, and I also like was lucky that I had an agent. I had a good sample. My writing style is sweeter, family oriented stuff, so I was so excited to get that chance to like write for Hallmark, and then things kind of even changed over there, where they were starting to go a little bit more out of their own box and do like stories that were different. And they still have the love story and a little bit of the predictability still at the core, because that's what the audience loves, and that's what we want, is that comfort. Especially, talk about something that boomed during the pandemic and after. Hallmark is doing phenomenally.
Oh my
Like,
gosh,
those
my
numbers
best
we
friend and I
can
got a subscription to Hallmark and we just were like loving it, especially during the
yeah.
pandemic.
And they do such a great job. Like, these movies are not low quality.
Hmm.
They are upper tier now, because become so profitable, and they know what they're doing, that they can make these movies fast and make them well, and they have a lot of great talent there. So that's been great. And then I got to fulfill a dream of mine, which was like, I got to write a movie for Christmas that had like faith-based themes. And I co-wrote it with another writer, and it was about like a grief support group and dealing with grief. And it was like not on the nose faithy, but it was like, how do like we infuse faith with like this community of people that are all in different stages and all in different areas of life. It's like, that was really an awesome thing to be able to do. So I'm just very thankful and blessed. And it also just shows you that no path in Hollywood, you've said this, we all know it, there is no path in Hollywood. You're going to go in all different directions. Like, one of my close friends who was on the assistant path with me ended up in like the children's area of writing. And like he's a very much like comedy focused writer, and he's able to infuse more like adult humor, like that's like not like crass, but like humor that's like smarter into kids programming. And I was able to infuse like some humor and some like faith into Hallmark. So it's like you kind of can bring what you do into what you do next. And who knows, I may end up on a medical drama one day. Like, it's like you just never know where you might. So, and I've had the opportunity to write commercials as well. I mentioned earlier with like Kristen Bell and Nick Offerman, from the people I worked with at Parks and Rec and all that. And that was something I never thought would come up. And those are like writing short, funny sketches for them. And so that's been a lot of fun too. So yeah, it's just like, I think it's cool. It's like, you should think about whenever you're in those positions of assistant or whatever, just like, I never would have imagined that's where I would have ended up. And that's what's so cool about the industry, is like, that can happen, and you just never know where you'll go.
Some of my takeaways from what you're just saying is Tyler didn't skip steps, and that's what I really love, that you put in the work, that you put in the years, right? I'm sure you had friends all over the country who are making mass boku bucks in the corporate world or whatever, and you're still on your little air mattress or whatever. You always had just like a mattress
Yeah, I
on your,
just had like a mattress on the floor
and now you're
for a
killing
long.
it. Has a place in Huntington Beach. It's amazing. But a big takeaway I wrote down was this word, bet. And why I did that is because you bet on yourself, and you had to eventually say, I'm ready and I have to take this leap, and I have a writer assistant job lined up, but I literally need to bet on myself now at this point. Because we've talked about this, and a lot of writers do not take that bet because they're scared.
Yeah. It's a leap of faith in every sense of the word. Like, even just from moving out here to like to having a job, because you know what? Some people get that writer assistant job and that show gets canceled after a season, and then you're just back at it again. It's like, I was very fortunate to have a path where I had a lot of shows. I knew a lot, like a lot of the people that I worked with would bring me on to the next show and the next show and the next show. And I tell people, like, I haven't really looked for a job since I was 22, because every job has come from the last job or a job before it. So that's another thing I think to look forward to when you do get those jobs, is like, you never know who in what department will be your friend or whatever. And that was the other thing, is like I was also never out to like, okay, I'm gonna look, I need to kill it in Hollywood and I'm gonna do whatever it takes. I was all about, I am from the Midwest. I love getting to know people, like have friends, make friends. And so like these people are my friends. Like I like them and we get along well together. And I'm a hard worker. Like I will put in the work, whether it's a writer assistant job or being a writer. And so like I think like having that work ethic with the goal to sort of like enjoy every step of the way too, and not being lamenting like, okay, when is this season over so I can get to the next one? Because every season I had before I got to learn every department as an assistant. So when I was on set, I knew how everything ran. I knew the people there. That was all for a reason, and that's so valuable. So, but yeah, going back to like, yeah, it's a bet, it's a bet you have to make, and you have to look at it as in a positive way of like, this is exciting. This is something that you just never know where you're gonna go, and it's gonna be, it can be fun, and it was fun. So it still is, even in strike
It
times.
still is. You mentioned how important it is to learn just every aspect of the set. It reminded me of when I was a social producer on Dirty John. I was on set every single day. I knew every department. And so by the time I ended up booking it was a McDonald's commercial, and we really had to work very tightly with props in that specific commercial. And the
Yeah,
other actors were just not cooperating. I was like, oh, I know props is probably so mad right
yeah,
now.
yeah.
They were just
Because
like smashing. It was like the donut sticks. They just kept like ruining them. Like, oh, you're gonna get in
oh
trouble.
no,
You,
yeah.
yeah, you have just like kept up such amazing momentum and energy, and obviously your faith is taking you through that, and you can obviously tell that. What is something you can kind of say right now to keep writers during this time going? Any sort of advice that's helping you continue going and stay positive that you want to pass along to your
Hmm.
fellow writers?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that like, since everyone is in the same boat right now, it's like there is like, it's hard to be like that's a good thing, because it's like we're all in a like, I don't we're not in a sinking ship, but we're like like out in the middle of the ocean a little bit, but all together. So like what I think is like cool, especially for new and aspiring writers, is like the landscape's going to be different, and it's an opportunity to use this time to write, use this time to meet some people, because you know what, if you go out to the picket lines right now, it's filled with writers and actors, and I know people who are networking out there,
So
and I think
smart,
that
Tyler.
I think it's okay to do that. Like, I think because like you're also showing your support and your solidarity. And like we welcome people from all over. There's tourists that come out there. And what I like is the how receptive actors and writers have been. There's a lot of photos on Deadline or stories about people who came from out of town to do a tour on the Warner Brothers lot that ended up, they were like hidden at first from the picketers, and then they saw them and they come around and then they learn about everything and then they stand there with them, so those aren't even people trying to break into the industry, but I do know people who are, if you're tactful and you are like, not being so just like pushy or whatever,
You can
like
bond. Yeah,
learn,
like
yeah, and
genuinely
just learn,
bond.
just like listen up to like what people are going through, like what we're fighting for, and you can learn how to apply that to like what you're looking for in your jobs, and you're going to meet new people. Like there's never been a Hollywood networking event at all at like from like 9 to noon and then like 1 to 5 or whatever, the
Where everyone's invited and
where
you don't have to
everyone's
pay
there,
for it.
and you just go outside and they're all there, and there's
Wow.
famous everywhere. So it's like there's big names. I've seen big names at the pickets and stuff, and not that that's the most important thing,
Yeah.
but it shows that like we're all in it together. People of
It's
all,
camaraderie.
exactly.
Whether
So
you're an assistant or even in the industry or an A-list actor, like
yes,
you guys are all standing on the picket lines together.
absolutely, yeah. And so when things start back up again, everyone, this is where it's like another double-edged sword, because it's like
Mm.
they're going to be needing content like crazy. So that's why like it's like good to take advantage of this time to build samples, to keep writing, to keep in touch with people. And also like there's going to be a huge, like I feel like the pipeline is going to get stuck, because there's going to be, everyone's going to be out there trying to do it, you know, because it's like there's a stream in Hollywood where it's like things are just moving in every department, you know, but when you stop everything and restart everything, it's all in one area at the same time, which is going to be probably like pre-production, you know.
Oh,
But
wow.
it flows so well and everyone has jobs when it's like, oh, every aspect is working. While some people are in pre-production, some people are post-production, some people are in production. So it's going to be interesting to see when this ends how that looks, you know. Like what exactly they're going to be focused on, you know, like are they going to be more focused on, well, it's also going to depend on like what's resolved first. Like, okay, say the writer strike is resolved this month, which I'm optimistic could happen. Then we still have to deal with like the actors, you know, but
Mm,
it could restart the pipeline, at least since the writers are the beginning of everything.
mm,
So yeah, so I think like strategically thinking about like what are ways I could take advantage of this time is like the best way. And I
very
think like
smart.
doing some networking and writing is really all you can do also, you know, because it's like you're not allowed to do much else. So, you
Wow.
know, you might as well use this time for that kind of stuff.
I
And
love
obviously also to just take care of yourself because
that. Mm.
like this is a time when, you know, we're going to go back into 60-hour work weeks and everyone in Hollywood is tired all the time. So like get re-energized, you know,
Go
like
visit Tyler in Huntington Beach.
yeah, I go to the beach every single day and I'm
Oh,
just like
so lovely.
it's amazing because it is re-energizing. And but I'm a big I keep telling people this. I'm like I am obsessed with California. I've been here like 11 years now or almost 12 years and I just like look out and I'm just like still like in wonder and awe. Like I just love it so
We
much.
both are. Every time I visit,
Yeah.
I'm like, Melinda, let's go to Hollywood. And every time we're on Hollywood Boulevard, she's like, Ashley, why do you always act like a tourist? You've lived here for 10 seconds.
It's
Um,
fun. I still like going down there. Yeah.
yeah, you and I would like go on a Warner Brothers tour and like
Oh, absolutely.
act like we never been to
Yeah.
Hollywood.
Yeah.
Tyler, what? And we're gonna catch up with Tyler, I decided, once the resolutions do come.
Oh, yeah. Okay, we decided. You decided.
I
Yeah.
decided that. Is that okay, Tyler?
I wasn't told, but I am fully
Yes.
on board.
Yes, I want you to be a part of that and give your thoughts and really explain to our viewers too what this means for the writers. And hopefully, everyone just comes to a really great resolution where everyone feels good, is valued, and is getting paid what they deserve. And in just a couple sentences, what do you hope comes out of this strike and a resolution?
Mm. Um, yeah, I mean, I hope that we can really meet halfway at least. Like I think that like what I really hope is we decide together how we will handle these issues going forward. Because it's not just about like making an agreement and then we're done and we're going now. Because AI, things like that are going to be continued discussions. So I'm hoping there's more of a relationship where we have regular discussions. We have like we're both aware of the advances in technology and we are, you know, moving forward as not just having talks once every 3 years, but we are just more in communication with each other. Because then I think that opens up more transparency on both sides of like, okay, we want to share this because these are our needs and we're helping each other meet our needs. Like it is a relationship, you know. Someone described it as it's like mom and dad are fighting right now, but they live in the same house. So like we have to kind of be that where we kind of like reach harmony again. So
Yeah.
honestly, I think harmony is what I want because harmony will foster that continued just, you know, conversation that we need to have because these new issues are not one and done.
Mm,
AI is going to be like a crazy thing that just has a new thing every month or whatever.
mm,
Like, so that's what I'm hoping for is just like more transparency in every way, you know.
mm.
And you know that's on our end too, but we don't have a lot to be transparent about other than like we want to work with you guys and we're concerned about some things and we want to be like heard over these concerns, you know, because we don't
Yeah.
want to get taken advantage of. So
Mm,
I think that's the main takeaway is like I think if there's harmony in these talks and that's what comes from it, then things will progress in a way that creates more jobs and grows the industry versus like, you know, makes it so kind of contentious. So
I love that. Harmony is the key.
thanks.
Tyler, thank you so much for coming on the channel. You have so much wisdom, guys. I really want you to definitely make sure you go support Tyler, support everything he's doing, and just the wonderful person that he is, because he's about to continue to make splashes in this industry. And you could tell he leads with his heart, with his faith, with his soul, and also his comedy. So he's very funny. And definitely, I'm going to make sure to put all of his links and everything in the description below and support him in his journey and his just everything you're doing in Hollywood. We're excited to chat with him again. Let us know what comments you have in the comments below. Talk about supporting artists. I have a way for you to support with $0, and that is smashing that subscribe button and that notifications bell so you never miss our next video, especially the news that Tyler is going to bring us next time. Tyler Straessle!
Oh, it's so good to see you. I want to see you more.
I know.
I'm
We're
in
gonna
LA.
make it happen.
Okay, great.
Fast. Let's get there fast, guys.